The one thing that I was disappointed about not finding was that recording.
I'm sorry, we are unable to complete your call as dialed.
1972 that I had found the first time I visited Woodbridge. It turned out that recording was in Independent Hill, one of the tributaries of Manassas. By the time I got back in October 73, that recording had been replaced by Operator Intercept, and in the rest of the area there were no other recordings that had that format. I think what happened was that 1973 being the year that Continental took over, I caught the last recording of Commonwealth Telephone's old format in June when I first visited. And by the time I got back in October, Continental had changed everything to their way of doing things, which was to say, the number you have reached in Town Name, Virginia,
Is not in service or has been changed.
Fortunately, however, the centralized intercept of Commonwealth Telephone, rather unique,
Special operator.
was still around and remained through the 1970s. Now, during the 3-year period from 1973 to 1976, when I finally got back with a recorder and began to make tapes, Continental Telephone replaced all of those 3-slot coin phones with the old gongs that signal the coin deposits, with new single-slot automatic electric coin phones, almost all of which were touch-tone, and a small minority of those were recordable. So that's what made these recordings possible. It was in that same period from 1973 to 1976 that Continental got rid of most of the old carrier systems, replacing them with T-carrier. If you listen to the triangle supervision test as recorded from Occoquan in 1973 with a microphone and with right in the background, which I'll partly filter out, you can sort of tell that it is an analog carrier system there. And don't let the background noise fool you. That's just the vacuum. Actually, it is really quiet. Now, in 1976, here is a call from Manassas to the soup test in triangle. This recording is made with a pickup coil, so the noise you hear in the background here is the actual carrier noise. Now that is a good quality phone recording, but it's T-carrier, so that's what we're working with. Now, what I don't understand about independent T-carrier systems of this time is that loud noises and supervision clicks make it ring, so instead of just going click with a lot of fuzz, it kind of goes nging along with it. I have no idea why that happens. It would almost suggest that they're using some sort of analog companding algorithm on it, which doesn't make any sense, but that's the only thing I can think of that could cause that effect. I can tell you that I never heard that kind of ringiness in a Bell system T-carrier system, though that tone is, well, that's actually heard to this day in the network. The rest of the phone calls in this program are from Manassas in May and August 1976. The August recordings were with Dave. It was part of that long phone trip we made. Here's the Triangle Intercept recording, circa 1976.
The number you have reached in Triangle, Virginia is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please stay on the line and an operator will answer. This is a recording.
On one call to Quantico, I got a reorder from there, which doesn't appear anywhere else, so here it is. That was a T-carrier trunk which happened to have modem-type frequency shift tones in the background. By the way, the triangle office appears on the 5 level of the first selector here as well as in Occoquan. So 221 triangle itself is 51, 640 Quantico converts to 50. While we're letting this Manassas dial tone time out, let me mention that in 1973, if you let a dial tone time out in Occoquan, it would just drop without dialing anything, and you'd be sitting there on the first selector, so it was a way to drop the register sender. Now that's not true in Occoquan, and here in Manassas, also, the dial tone times out to a reorder. We can't hear what it dialed there, but there's a very good chance that it's doing the same thing there as later on when we'll hear it in the partial dial condition. You just dial less than 7 digits of a number, and of course with no dial tone present, you can hear exactly what it's dialing to get that reorder, which is now a new tone plant because Manassas used to have this ring.
The number you have reached in Manassas, Virginia.
And now it has pseudo-modern tones. But of course it's still a Stromberg XY just like before. I'll call the time number 3617171 and you'll hear the new Manassas ringtone.
Telephone company time 2-2. Temperature 89.
Had I rotary dialed that phone number, by the way, the register sender would have dropped out after the first 2 digits, because they have set it up so that 361 is on 1, 367 is on 7, and 368 is on 8. Now with the time number being 3617171, you can pretty well bet that 3687171 is going to be unassigned, and if they ever were so foolish to assign it, it wouldn't last. So you can bet that number is not in service or has been changed. Is there an echo in here? When I dial 368, the register sender dials 8.
The number you have reached in Manassas, Virginia is not in service or has been changed.
I have a better quality recording of that on the vacant level trunk, which in May 1976 was working. In August 1976 it was busied out. Here's a vacant code going to the vacant level trunk, which the register sender reaches by dialing 20. That's the official reserved vacant level that it sends vacant codes to.
The number you have reached in Manassas, Virginia is not in service or has been changed. If you need assistance, please stay on the line and an operator will answer. This is a recording.
Special operator, what number are you dialing, please?
When you dial a vacant code, the register sender hangs up on the switching train. Then it picks up again, pauses, and dials 20 to get the vacant level recording. What follows was recorded in August 1976 on a day when the vacant level trunk was busied out, and so we get a reorder. Not the immediate reorder of the dial tone timeout, but the blocked level reorder, the one that slides over. If you dial 1 plus a vacant code, it's even stranger. You have to dial 4 more digits, and then the register sender dials a 0 immediately followed by hanging up, then picking up again and waiting, and then dialing 20, which again goes to the same reorder. Let me slow that down for you. I'm going to dial 1-660-1111. Okay, now it's going to dial a 0 immediately followed by the click of hanging up. Okay, it's hung up now. I'm slowing it down a little bit. And now it's going to pick up again. There it goes. Then it pauses. Now it dials 20 and drops out. I might as well record the new busy signal here in Manassas, and boy is it loud. Another place where you get the busy tone, although it sounds different here, is the callback circuit. Customers reach it by dialing 419 plus the 7-digit number they want to reach. The register sender converts that to 219 plus 7 digits. The busy signal sounds different from the last example, partly because it really is different, but also because of EQ differences in the recording equipment I was using. "611" has a ring, but it's the power ring. Has that same background noise, though, as the other tones in this office. When you dial 611, it converts to 24.
Telephone repair, may I help you? Hello.
Actually, I did the whole switching train map in October 1973, and it is fundamentally the same now. On the first selector, 1 goes to the 361 exchange, that's in this office. 2 goes to a second selector, and we'll get to what's on all that later. 3 went to reorder. In 1976, I didn't dial 3, so I can't tell you what it does now, because that's when these recordings were made. But I would bet that it does not go to reorder anymore, and the reason is that, as you'll see later, this phone company now knows how to give a reorder to the customer without devoting a level to it. I don't think Commonwealth knew the trick. 4 was where 1+ calls from home phones went, and it's quite possible that both 3 and 4 are going to long distance now. I do dial 4 later on in this program. 5 went to Triangle, we saw that before. 6 went to Occoquan, 491-494-690. 7 went to the 367 exchange for IBM, 8 went to the 368 exchange, and 9 went to Haymarket, 754. That's a code that is not local from the rest of the county, but is from here. And 0 was actually the code for the operator. There are no Arlington Tandem trunks here because there's nothing local from here that needs to go to the Arlington Tandem. One of the things I did capture in Manassas was what the register sender does in the partial dial condition. I'm going to dial the code for Independent Hill, 791. When I dial 791, the register sender will dial 28. I'm then going to just wait, and during that silent time, you're going to hear some subtle Stromberg low tone coming through the register sender. I don't know whether this has to do with our call or other activity in the office, but it's pretty strange sounding. Here's a sample of it. Yeah, that'll happen in the middle, and then finally, after a certain number of seconds, the register sender will hang up, pick up again, and do something I didn't know it could do. So what did it dial at the end there? Well, it was one digit. And at first I thought it was a 0, but then I looked and saw that 0 used to go to the operator in the old days, and it seems, well, it just doesn't seem likely that it would be used for partial dial now. So I looked very closely and saw that it's a digit consisting of 11 pulses.
What?
Now, I know when we're talking about step, you're thinking about the 11th terminal on any given level, and there is reorder there for sure, but you don't get there by dialing 11 pulses. You get to the reorder on the 11th terminal of any given level by the fact that you dialed a valid digit, 1 through 0, and all the trunks were busy. The other possibility is that your digit-absorbing selector blocked you, but again, you dialed a valid digit, 1 through 0. Now, I was served by number 1 step in Atlanta, and I can assure you that if you dial 11 pulses on one of those, it doesn't go to a reorder, it just goes up to the 10th level, that's as high as it can go, and gives you the operator trunk. So this is a unique feature of the Stromberg XY. It has the ability to actually accept from the customer, or in this case from the register sender, a digit of 11 pulses and respond to it differently than it would if you dialed a 0. All other steps will just step up to the 10th level. This one actually responds to the 11th pulse. Now, it turns out that this was not an accident. Stromberg actually designed it that way. There's a good reason for it. And because it's an enhanced feature that makes the XY selector better than your normal step selector, they actually were using it as a selling point when they would go out and pitch the phone companies. Now, as many of you know, I'm not a big internet or computer user, but sometimes you can find stuff out there that is really worthwhile. Well, you know, I found something from Stromberg where they talk up the selling points of the Stromberg XY, and yes, the 11 pulse feature is something they cover. Now, when I first saw that, I thought, well, there we go again. Marketing takes a minor enhancement and blows it up into the best thing since sliced bread. But then I thought about it, and you know, if you're going to build a Senderized step, you are going to want to deliver reorder to the customer. Well, how do you do it? Well, since you're using a Senderized step, there aren't going to be any digit-absorbing selectors. So you can't have it dial something that goes to an artificially blocked level. So if you want a reorder that the customer can just be dumped upon for permanent signals, you're actually going to have to devote an entire level somewhere just for the reorder tone. The only other alternative is to have the register senders deliver it, but then what? They have to time out. So, you know what? The 11 pulses feature that causes the first selector to go to reorder and then stay there as long as the customer's on the line really is a selling point. Now, I've just given you the technical reasons for the feature. The salesman here uses a more emotional approach, as would be expected, so he doesn't sell it the way, say, I would. But anyway, here it is. You can see what you think.
It's very special because if you can see, the numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board.
Most go up to 10.
Exactly.
Does that mean it's...
Well, it's not 10. You see, you're on 10 here, all the way up, all the way up,
Yeah.
all the way up. Where can you go from there? Where?
I don't know.
Nowhere, exactly. What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly.
Why don't you just make 10 be the top?
These go to 11.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't resist. The trouble with this joke is that most of the people who got it thought of it before I was able to make it. And if you don't know the movie, just Google "These Go to 11," you'll find it. Now, since we're on the subject, I might as well mention that there was one place where the number 1 step would respond to 11 pulses, although it wasn't any good for anything, and that was on not the selector but the connector switch. If you dialed an 11 as the very last digit of the phone number, and of course you know on the last digit the connector switch is not stepping up, but it is sliding over, it will work. It will actually go over to the 11th terminal, which is absolutely dead, and you're just left high and dry forever. So the only place where 11 is even received by a regular step is on the last digit of a phone number, and it gets you absolutely nowhere, and it is not influenced by other connectors going to that same spot. Believe me, we tried. Anyway, back to Manassas in 1976. Now, if you dial 411, that converts to 22. Since the operators for 411 are in Dale City, the trunk is T-Carrier, as is just about everything that comes out of this building. In fact, from here on out, we're going to be getting T-Carrier on almost every call. If it's anything other than T-Carrier, I'll let you know. Here's 411.
Direct assistance, Lana. Direct assistance, Lana.
What do you know? I flashed the trunk and it reset. Apparently, I could have sat there and played operator roulette. And had I done so, every time an operator answered, we would have heard. In this office, the 6th level on the first selector is where you'll find the trunks to Occoquan, which has 491, 494, and 690 serving the rather small Lorton area. When I call a 494 number, the register sender here converts that to 64.
The number you have reached in Occoquan, Virginia is not in service or has been changed. If you need assistance, please stay on the line and an operator will answer. This is a recording.
You see, that's what I meant by the new sound of calling between Manassas and Occoquan. It did not sound like that in 1973, I assure you. The operator answered directory assistance because it is the same operator, and sometimes they would make that mistake. The ticking between the recording and the operator was noise on the intercept trunk. Here's another partial dial. I'm going to dial 670, the Dale City code this time. It'll pick up and dial 26. That goes to Dale City, and then a 0. Again, for some reason, they dial a 0 into the Dale City trunks. So it'll dial 260, and then I'll just sit there and not dial anything else. It will eventually, after a certain amount of time, hang up, pick up, and then go right over the cliff, i.e. dial an 11. This time you don't hear so much Stromberg low tone on the register sender. Here's a call to the soup test in the IBM Centrex. From here, you can tell that IBM Centrex is not in the same building as 361 and 368. In fact, it's going over a squealy wire trunk. Here's another broken soup test, but it's an improvement over October 73 when it didn't answer at all. Here's a ringing number in IBM. It actually answers. The ringtone in the IBM Centrex is kind of a cool sound. I think Independent Hill 791 has that same particular type of tone plant, and it's actually one of my favorites. You can hear the essence of the ringtone between the ring bursts a little bit on this call.
Manassas.
I've always thought of that type of ringing machine as St. Thomas ring, because the first place I ever heard it was in the Charlotte Amalie St. Thomas Virgin Islands office, and that ring was very pretty. Another place where I heard that ring was Bailey, North Carolina, in the Wilson area. Now the busy signal for that tone plant sounds like this. In 1975, in Bailey, North Carolina, you could actually hear the ringtone bleeding through on the busy signal. And for that matter, in 1975, Bailey's low tone returned the favor by having the reorder show up in between rings. Now here in the IBM Centrix, they've done something very strange. They've put a modern tone, low tone, for the busy signal, and yet you still get that St. Thomas ring bleed-through effect. Here's the busy signal in 367, the IBM Centrix. You might not hear this without headphones, but in between the busy tones you can actually hear the St. Thomas ring. The essence of it is continuous, but it gets louder during one particular ring phase. Another abnormality can be heard here on the IBM Centrix reorder. Now, as for what happened to the original low-tone generator for the IBM Centrix, maybe it went over to Haymarket, because on this next call, which is to Haymarket, you'll hear a bona fide St. Thomas type reorder tone. The office code is 754. It's on the 9 level of the first selector here, and for some reason Manassas dials a 4 into the trunks. So when I dial 754, the register sender dials 94. I'll then dial 0111. There is no 0,000 group, so it'll end up on the reorder. This goes over some sort of old-fashioned analog carrier trunk. From the tapes, it's not possible to tell which type it is. It might be something unique. I tried to hang up, but instead the Haymarket trunk reset. I'll dial a few more things that go to reorder and then eventually give up. Now with a St. Thomas type reorder, you would expect St. Thomas ring on Haymarket, but no. Instead, they have, well, it sounds like the Bell Systems version of phony modern ring. This particular call goes again over an analog carrier trunk that has a lot of resonance and actually sounds almost like N2 or N3 carrier would sometimes. Here's the intercept recording in Haymarket. This call actually goes over T-carrier.
The number you have reached in Haymarket, Virginia is not in service or has been changed. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial your operator. This is a recording. Thank you.
As you can now tell by that recording, Haymarket is now a part of Continental Telephone. But in 1970 it was owned by Piedmont Telephone, a smaller independent than Commonwealth. The equipment there is either XY or STEP, and it is not Senderized. I've been there many times, and there wasn't a single recordable payphone in Gainesville or Haymarket, so I never got it on tape. It wasn't especially exciting anyway. Independent Hill is the other office that has St. Thomas ring in this area. Here's a call to the soup test. In this example, you hear power ring right before each audible ring. Independent Hill, when I first encountered it, had that recording with the cryptic ID. When I came around in October 1973, that recording was gone and replaced by operator intercept, and now in 1976 it has a recording again, this time with the typical continental text and no operator cut-through.
The number you have reached in Independent Hill, Virginia is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial directory assistance. This is a recording.
All right, I'm going to get all numerical on you again. Here's the rest of the layout of the originating switching train in Manassas, and that is there's a second selector group on the 2 level. So when you dial 2, you go into a second selector, and then on that second selector, you have 2-2 going to directory assistance, 2-3 going to the 590 Hoadley ESC, 2-6 goes to Dale City, 2-7 goes to Nokesville 594, 2-8 goes to Independent Hill 791, and 2-1 went to a third selector with just a few test circuits on it. All the other 2s were vacant. As for the 2-1s, the third selector on 2-1, it was completely vacant except for 5, 7, and 9, which corresponded to 415, 417, and 419, the dial pulse test, the test board, and the callback circuit. And that was it for the entire originating switching train. The code for the dial speed checker 415 is still active, and it still converts to 215, but that level is busied out now. So apparently they don't need it. I'd show you, but you've heard the reorder tone enough times recently. Here's the intercept recording in Nokesville. Of course, to call Nokesville, you have to go through Manassas. Oh, wait a minute, this is Manassas. So from here, it's going to dial 27 to get to Nokesville, and then repeat my last 4 digits.
The number you have reached in Nokesville, Virginia is not in service or has been changed. If you need assistance, please stay on the line and an operator will answer. This is a recording.
Special operator, number you're dialing.
And here's the Nokesville soup test. Now here's something I almost passed by, but then I thunk about it, and I'm going to include this in the tape because it's kind of unique. The Hoadley ESC is MF'd into by Occoquan and Dale City. When you dial it from Occoquan, for example, the Occoquan register sender waits until you dial the last digit of the phone number, then it dials 2 digits to access the Hoadley trunk, which flashes, then it MFs the number. For some reason, Manassas actually dial pulses to Hoadley, and so here we have a flash occurring in the middle of the dialing out of a phone number. This is the only example of it in the whole tape collection of Prince William County. So I'm going to dial 590, and you'll hear the register sender start right up, dialing 23, that's the code to get Hoadley, and you'll hear the flash if you listen carefully. Tick, tick, that last little thing is the trunk flashing. Then I'll dial the last 4 digits, which will then be dialed out. Apparently the ESC always flashes and accepts dial pulse or MF, and that's just the way it is. After the recording plays, I will flash to reset the trunk, then redial a different last 4 digits, which will ring.
The number you have reached in Hoadley, Virginia is not in service or has been changed. If you need assistance, please hang up and dial directory assistance. This is a recording.
One thing that's changed since 1973 when I did the original selector map here is that 0 plus and 1 plus dialing now work from coin phones. Originally you just had to dial 0, to which the register sender would respond by dialing 0. They just happened to put the trunks to the old operator on 0. They really could have put it anywhere. Well, now there's not a chord board there anymore. There are trunks to the new 0 plus handling system. I'm going to dial 1 plus 212-555-1212. It's going to wait until the end of the phone number. Then it'll dial a 0, wait for the trunk to flash, and then MF the number I'm calling. You won't hear the MFs of the number I'm calling, unfortunately, but then when the register sender drops out and the trunk goes off hook, you will hear the ANI sender sending my phone number.
Directory, may I help you?
Had to hang up on that a long time for it to let me go, not surprising. Now let's try dialing 0 plus 212-555-1212. Now this is 1976. Interstate directory assistance is free, and dialing 0 in front of it is not a proper dialing sequence. So the 0 plus dialing system will end up giving me a recording. Now to our ears, this call is going to go through exactly the same way as dialing 1 plus. We will hear it dial a 0 to get the trunk, we'll hear the trunk flashing, a pause while it MFs the number I'm calling, and then again you'll hear the ANI sender sending my number with the same digits and the same start tone as when I dialed 1 plus. So everything's going to appear to be the same, yet the system in Woodbridge is going to know that I dialed a 0 plus the phone number, and it'll give me the recording. How does it know? I'll answer in a minute.
We're sorry, but we have a problem in completing your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or ask your operator to help you. This is a recording. We're sorry, but we have a problem in completing your call as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or ask your operator to help you. This is a recording.
You know, when I first listened to the tape, I was really confused because I've dialed from so many steps, and usually the automatic number identification tone sequence will have a different start at the end depending upon whether you dialed 0 plus or 1 plus. And I was trying to figure out how does it know, because it's dialing 0 to get the trunk group and sending the same ANI sequence. And then I finally realized that this is Senderized step, and it is MFing the number I am calling. That's the MF sequence you don't hear. And what they're doing is they're sending a different start tone on the end of the called number. That's the one we don't hear, and that's how it knows. After all, there are 4 different start tones which can be used to indicate whether it's a customer dialing 0 plus, a customer dialing 1 plus, or a coin dialing 0 plus, or a coin dialing 1 plus. There's not enough information on the tape to know how they did it, but one way would be to have 0 plus dialing from coin and non-coin, and also the 1 plus dialing from coin, all go over the trunk group on 0. For that, they would use 3 out of the 4 start tones. Then the 1 plus from home could go over the trunk group on 4. That's where the old-fashioned direct-distance dial equipment used to be. Let's see what's on 4 now. I'm going to drop the register sender by rotary dialing 3-6, then I'll rotary dial a 4. You'll hear me go into a trunk, which has some crosstalk on it. I'll try dialing into the trunk, and everything I dial will be completely ignored, and at some point I will just give up. Yeah, nothing was going to happen there because this is an MF-only trunk. In other words, the office we went into expects Manassas to MF the number that we want to call. This is probably that new switch in Woodbridge that handles the 0 plus traffic, and the trunk only listens to MF, so I only stayed on there for 22 seconds, and it either hadn't timed out to a reorder yet, or maybe it just times out to dead silence. Some ESS-type systems did that at the time. In any event, that wasn't going to go anywhere, unless I had brought a blue box, in which case I probably would have been able to key the number I wanted to call. The trunk would go off hook, then I could key the number I was calling from, and actually access the network that way. But I wasn't so equipped, so couldn't do anything. Nice crosstalk, though. We heard an MF sequence and some step noise. One final note on this office. On that last call, you might have noticed that as I was flashing the digit 4 with my hook switch, which is the only way to make rotary dial pulses from a touch-tone phone, the Manassas reorder tone was on the line from the time I hit the first pulse until the switch cut through. That is a really common thing for Stromberg XY, to have the reorder tone appear while you are dialing on a particular selector. Only XYs do that. First time I heard it, actually, was from Greenville, North Carolina, as I could hear the Greenville NX1 dialing into one of the tributaries, which at the time I didn't realize was a Stromberg. In fact, I think in the old narration I refer to it as a step, but it's a Stromberg XY. You can hear this reorder on the line right through the Greenville register sender.
Service at this time.
Here are 2 more examples of it here. First of all, let's go call the busied out level where the dial speed check test used to be. I'll drop the register sender by flashing 3-6. Then I'll flash a 2 and you'll hear a little burst of reorder during that short flash. That reorder is the immediate reorder that the first selector puts on when the register sender dials an 11. In fact, it may just be that that reorder comes on from the first pulse, and then if it goes up to 11 pulses, the selector just keeps it on and doesn't do anything else. Now I'll flash a 1 and a 5, which will end up on the more conventional reorder tone. the one you find on the 11th terminal, in this case of the 5th level of the 3rd selector. And just in case you haven't heard enough reorder tones yet, here's one more example of it. I'm going to drop the register sender, then flash a 9, that goes to Haymarket. During the flashing of the 9, you'll hear the Manassas reorder in the background. We'll get an old-fashioned carrier trunk of an undetermined type. Then I'll flash something on that trunk, which goes to, you guessed it, a reorder tone, although the one from Haymarket, of course, will be the blocked level type reorder. Well, that's it for this segment. Now, the next segment opens with an accidental crosstalk incident in 1974 when I called back into this area from Long Island. After that, there's a recording made on the ground from the first trip in October 1973 to Dale City. It's a fast-moving segment recorded with a microphone, but it's not tedious, and it lays out a switching train map that's rather unusual.